Welcome back to Roast Reality, where we don't mock greatness, we study the cost of building it. This is Icon Burn, Episode 2. What if I told you Cristiano Ronaldo isn't fighting other players anymore? He's fighting time. Not the scoreboard, not the league, not the headlines. Time, the undefeated champion. Because when you build your identity on being extraordinary, aging isn't a natural process. It's a threat to meaning itself. Ronaldo didn't spend his life trying to be the best. He spent it trying to become a myth. And myths have one rule. Myths aren't allowed to age. That's why this is no longer football. This is a man trying to outrun the one opponent he was never prepared to face, the body that carried him to greatness. The world sees highlights. The world sees goals. The world sees abs and stadium lights. But behind all of that, there is a fear powerful enough to move mountains, the fear of being forgotten. Welcome to Cristiano Ronaldo, the war against time. Before we begin, a disclaimer. This episode is not about judging Cristiano Ronaldo as a person. We're not here to debate who's the GOAT or whether your favorite highlight reel proves a philosophical point. We're examining a public persona, a cultural symbol, a myth shaped by media, fandom, and time. Everything discussed here is based on public information and the observable narrative built around him. This is analysis, not accusation. Reflection, not evaluation. If you admire him, good. If you don't, also fine. You're welcome either way, because greatness is not defined by whether everyone agrees. Greatness is defined by how much meaning we project onto it. And if you feel the sudden urge to write a 3-page defense essay in the comments, that's okay. Just remember, the algorithm thanks you for your service. Let's begin. Every legend begins with a wound. Not a moment of triumph, but a moment of humiliation strong enough to burn itself into identity. For Ronaldo, that wound was simple. Being told he wasn't enough. Too skinny, too poor, too ordinary. Football wasn't a dream. It was a way out. A ladder thrown down into a life that felt too small for the scale of his hunger. Most players want to play. Ronaldo wanted to escape. And escape is not motivation. It's fuel that never runs out. At the beginning, he wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the most gifted. What he had was ferocity, the kind that makes you train like someone is trying to steal your future. He turned insecurity into obsession, obsession into discipline, discipline into religion. This is where the myth was born, not when he started scoring, but when he realized that effort could outperform nature, that you could build yourself piece by piece, rep by rep, hour by hour into something beyond human. Not better than others, untouchable to others. This is the core of Ronaldo. He did not become great. He constructed greatness. Every muscle is a decision. Every goal is an argument. Every celebration is a declaration. I made myself. You cannot take this from me. But when you build a legend with your hands, every crack feels personal. Every limit feels like betrayal. Every year feels like loss. And that's when the myth stops being inspiration and becomes burden. Because if your identity is built on being extraordinary, you can never afford to be human again. For most athletes, training is preparation. For Cristiano Ronaldo, training is worship. Not of the sport, not of the team, not even of victory, but of the self he is trying to protect. Because the moment you believe you are made for greatness, you fear the day it leaves you. So you build rituals. Rigid, unwavering, absolute. Wake, train, recover. Eat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Not until it's perfect, until it's impossible to be anything else. This is not motivation. Motivation fades. This is devotion. Ronaldo doesn't treat his body like a body. He treats it like a temple, not something he owns, something he serves. The diet is not nutrition. It's purity. The training is not improvement. It's penance. The repetition is not practice. It's prayer. Every rep says, I refuse to decay. Every sprint says, time will not catch me today. Every controlled breath says, I will not be like everyone else. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Discipline is beautiful only when it's voluntary. When it becomes identity, it becomes inescapable. He didn't choose discipline. Discipline chose him. And once you are chosen, you do not get to walk away. Because the moment he stops, even for a day, even for an hour, the myth begins to die. And he has spent his entire life making sure the myth feels more real than the man. Greatness doesn't exist in isolation. It needs an audience. And Ronaldo's audience did not simply admire him, they believed in him. Not as a player, as a proof. Proof that discipline conquers nature, that hunger conquers destiny, that the ordinary can be carved into the divine. This is why his fans are just fans. They are witnesses of a miracle. Watch how they speak about him. Not he plays well, but he is built different. He is inevitable. He is the standard. This is not commentary. This is scripture. The physique, the celebration, the jawline, the glare mid-match. These are not accidents. These are symbols, icons, interior flags people carry inside their minds to remind themselves who they want to be. Ronaldo doesn't just score goals. He manufactures identity for millions. He is not their hero. He is their aspiration in flesh. And here's where perfection becomes a trap. When the world accepts you as flawless, you no longer get to be human. You must now be the idea of perfection, forever. And ideas do not age gracefully. Once your image becomes a monument, your life becomes maintenance. Maintenance of the myth, maintenance of the smile, maintenance of the certainty that you are still above. Because the moment you show weakness, the moment the illusion cracks, the entire cult feels it. And all the belief that was holding you up begins to lean. And that is the real burden of perfection. It does not allow decline. It only allows tragedy. There comes a moment in every legend's life when the opponent stops wearing a jersey and starts staring back from the mirror. Not younger, not stronger, just new. Because greatness ages differently, not gradually, but suddenly. One day you are the fastest, the sharpest, the unstoppable force. Then you wake up, and your body whispers a truth your mind refuses to hear. Not anymore. This is the moment every athlete fears. But for Ronaldo, it was something deeper. Because when your identity is built on being extraordinary, any sign of decline feels like death. The world didn't slow him down. His rivals didn't defeat him. Time simply arrived. The steps became heavier. The recovery became longer. The sprints took more out of him than they gave back. But here's the tragedy. Ronaldo is not allowed to slow down. Because slowing down is an admission. An admission is collapse. A god is only a god while he performs miracles. Once he stops, he becomes a memory. And memory is not immortality. Memory is a funeral with applause. So he fights the only opponent who never celebrates victory. The only rival with a perfect record. The only force that does not negotiate. Time. And you can outrun defenders. You can outrun critics. You can outrun doubt. But no one outruns the body that carries them. This is where the story stops being about football. This is where it becomes mythology. Because Ronaldo is no longer competing to win. He is competing not to disappear. Time does not attack with violence. It attacks with subtraction. A millisecond slower, a fraction less lift. A sprint that used to feel like flight now feels like gravity remembering your name. No injury, no collapse, just the quiet arrival of limits. And Ronaldo's response? He does not accept them. He does not negotiate. He does not age gracefully. He declares war. More training, more control, more discipline, more sacrifice. If the average athlete trains to stay in shape, Ronaldo trains to deny mortality. Every gym session is a battlefield. Every meal is a shield. Every recovery cycle is a strategy meeting with his own biology. Because if his body breaks, the myth breaks. And if the myth breaks, he becomes replaceable. And for a man who carved himself into a symbol, being replaceable is worse than losing. It is erasure. This is not about football. This is a man trying to freeze the moment before time catches up. Because the crowd does not love forever. The crowd loves now. And now is slipping. There is a dignity in knowing when to stop, in stepping down, in letting the world remember you at your peak. Cristiano Ronaldo does not want that dignity, because for him, stopping is not peace. Stopping is disappearance. He does not want to fade. He does not want to be remembered as he was. He wants to remain as he is, forever. And so he refuses, not the critics, not the transfers, not the headlines. He refuses time's permission to move on. People call it ego, but ego is just identity that refuses to die. Imagine spending your entire life proving the world wrong, every day, every field, every stadium, every season, and then one day the world stops fighting you, not because it respects you, but because it has moved on to someone younger. That is not defeat. That is erasure. So he keeps going, not because he believes he can remain the best, but because the alternative is worse, being no one. The world tells him to slow down. He hears, accept decay. The world tells him to let go. He hears, let yourself be replaced. The world tells him to pick dignity. He hears, die quietly. So of course he refuses. What else could a myth do? Because legends are not built to retire. They are built to burn. There's a secret about greatness that no one tells you. The higher you rise, the fewer people can breathe where you stand. Because greatness demands sacrifice. And the first sacrifice is company. Everyone admires the myth. No one can speak to the man. Teammates see the legend. Fans see the symbol. Media sees the storyline. But who sees him? Not the athlete. Not the icon. Not the statue carved into the collective imagination. Just the person who has to wake up every day and be more than yesterday, just to remain equal to who he already was. Success unshared becomes isolation. Perfection becomes a fortress with no door. People don't approach greatness. They worship it from distance. And worship is the loneliest pedestal on earth. Everyone says they want to be number one, but no one talks about what happens after that. After you've outrun doubt, after you've silenced critics, after you've reached the summit. There's no one else up there. Just the wind, just the echo of your own ambition, and the realization that you did not build a crown, you built a cage. The world loves what he represents, but only he has to live with what it costs. There is a rhythm to fame, a cycle. First, we discover someone. Then, we admire them. Then, we worship them. And then, inevitably, we want to see the cracks. Not because they changed, but because we did. The crowd doesn't stay impressed forever. A miracle repeated becomes routine. A routine becomes expectation. An expectation becomes resentment. People don't just love greatness. They grow tired of it, because greatness reminds them of everything they could have been, but weren't willing to sacrifice to become. And when admiration turns into discomfort, the crowd looks for relief. Relief comes in the form of doubt. He's declining. He's not the same. He should retire. No, really, he's finished this time. But listen closely. This isn't analysis. This is catharsis. Because the moment a legend falls, everyone watching feels less small. We lift icons to the sky so we can feel inspired, and then we pull them back down so we don't have to feel inferior. It was never about Ronaldo. It was always about us. The crowd wants a miracle until the miracle becomes familiar. Then the crowd wants a lesson, preferably a painful one, because nothing entertains the masses more than the fall of a god they helped create. And the tragedy is, he knows this. He can feel the shift. The applause changed tone. The eyes watching him changed temperature. Not hatred, not disgust, something colder: boredom. And boredom kills myths faster than age ever could. Here is the paradox at the core of Cristiano Ronaldo's existence. The man is aging, the myth is not. The body grows older, the legend remains timeless. The knees remember every sprint. The muscles remember every winter. The lungs remember every cold morning on the training pitch. But the image? The poster on the wall? The highlight compilation with music swelling in the background? That Ronaldo never changes. He is eternal, frozen in peak form, a statue sculpted by memory, slowed footage, and the need for heroes. And this is the cruel part. The world does not love the man. The world loves the version of him that no longer exists. So every time he steps on the field now, he is not just playing a game. He is competing with his own ghost, the younger him, the faster him, the impossible him. And that ghost has one unfair advantage: it does not need to breathe. This is the tragedy of becoming a symbol. The world stops allowing you to be human. You are not permitted to slow, or change, or soften, or simply live. You're expected to remain the version of yourself that made everyone believe something about themselves, because the myth wasn't made to honor you. The myth was made to inspire them. And myths, unlike men, do not age. They only fracture. So he runs, not to win, not to prove, not even to stay on top. He runs to stay aligned with the legend the world built around him. Because when the myth and the man separate, something breaks, not just in him, but in everyone who believed. And here is where the story stops being tragic and becomes beautiful. Because the world looks at Cristiano Ronaldo and sees a man who refuses to age, refuses to step down, refuses to fade. But look closer. It is not pride that keeps him going. It is love. Love for the game that raised him. Love for the identity he built with his own hands. Love for the version of himself he still remembers when the stadium lights hit just right. People say he should age gracefully. But for some people, grace is not surrender. Grace is struggle. There is dignity in resistance. There is art in refusal. There is poetry in not letting go. Because greatness was never supposed to last forever. It was only meant to burn. The beauty is not that he won. The beauty is that he is still fighting. Not against opponents, not against critics, not against expectations, against time itself. And time is undefeated. But Ronaldo is still on the field. Still running, still pushing, still refusing to be replaced by memory. And maybe that is the most human thing about him, not the perfection, but the refusal to let it go. Immortality isn't living forever. It's being remembered forever. And Cristiano Ronaldo understands this better than anyone. He has always known that one day the cheers would fade. The jerseys would go into closets. The posters would fade from bedroom walls. Every icon eventually becomes a memory. But memories are fragile. They erode, they blur, they get replaced. So Ronaldo did what every legendary figure in history has done. He tried to stay in the present long enough to become permanent. He is not trying to outrun age. He is trying to outrun forgetting. And maybe that sounds impossible. Maybe it sounds tragic. Maybe it sounds desperate. But look closer. This is the same fight every human faces. The fear of becoming irrelevant. The fear of being replaced. The fear of no longer mattering. Ronaldo is not a god. He is a mirror. We look at him and see our own struggle against the passing of time, against the fading of our best days, against the quiet erosion of who we once were. His greatness was never about perfection. His greatness was in the refusal to surrender to inevitability. And that is why he will be remembered. Not because he was the fastest, not because he scored the most, not because he lifted trophies to the sky, but because he showed the world that to be human is to fight against the universe itself, knowing full well you will lose, and running anyway. Immortality was never about winning. It was about not stopping. If this made something shift in you, even slightly, then stay. There's more to understand about how we build icons, how we worship them, and how we see ourselves in them. This is Icon Burn, a study of the myths we live inside. Subscribe if you want to keep going further, not upward, not louder, just deeper. And if you want the darker side of this story, the machinery behind influence, power, and culture, watch our other project, Box Dark Side Stories. Punchline shows you the symbol. Box shows you the system behind it. See you in the next chapter.